I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with the head. Intercepted. 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
31-26, your final score in Week 8. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers fall to the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons pick up the season sweep for the 2024 season. I tell you this, man, the Creamsicles, it's been fun. It's been fine seeing them. I'm happy they're back, I suppose. But it's time we go ahead and just put them back on the shelf. I think the camaraderie, seeing the crowd get into it, the wave of orange, the old school decorations, it's all fine and dandy. Even the 70s music they pump throughout the stadium. I appreciate it. I love it. It is a unique game day atmosphere, one of the best uniforms in sports. But the Bucs just can't seem to find a way to win in them. Welcome back to the Cannon Fire Podcast. I am your host, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. The Buccaneers fall to 4-4. Evan, 0-2 since the return of the Creamsicle. How you feeling about this game?
Well, it's one. I'm willing to give the Creamsicles one more year. Just to let you know, just get out in front of that, right? Because I know you said about getting rid of them. I'm willing to give them one more year. Can you schedule them against like the Panthers or something though? Like you can schedule a bit of an easier game, right? Like I don't know who their opponents are for 2026, or 2025. Just schedule an easy one. But I'm not ready to see them go yet. But yes, they've now still only won, I believe, one game in those Creamsicles, and really, I mean, it was a game that. The final score is going to make it seem a little bit closer, right? Only a 5-point loss. But at the end of the day, it was a little bit worse than that, right? There were a few things that the Falcons had plenty of chances to kind of pull away and put this game away and didn't. So they really gave the Bucs a chance. I mean, the Bucs really didn't do much on their own to keep themselves in this football game. Tyler Algier has that fumble, goes out of the back of the end zone to safety. Sure, Christian Ezien makes a tackle, but he's bobbling the ball before he even, gets touched, right? So that was a miscue by Atlanta. Younghoe Koo misses the field goal, which I guess he just can't make field goals against the Bucs. I don't know, except for that one that sent the game to overtime week 5, of course. But yeah, I mean, this is a big loss. I mean, it is a tough loss. And look, of course, the game that they're with, the first game that they're without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is the game that they have, a minute to go, over 50 yards and score a touchdown with no timeouts left. Like, not an easy task. So that final drive, I'm not really going to dissect that too much. I do think they waited a bit they didn't spike the ball once. I think there was an opportunity there to maybe spike the ball, stop the clock, just keep some time, but they elected to not do that. Couldn't really get that chunk play quick enough. Once they did, it was pretty much too late. So, that last drive. But I mean, really, the story of this game, I think most of the chat and stuff is going to talk about as we have a $2 super chat from Brutal's Bucks. Appreciate the $2 super chat. Brutal. He says Jameis greater than Simon Baker. He just beat the Ravens. Well, teams win games, not quarterbacks. So. You can think that if you think James Winston's better than Baker Mayfield, that's fine. Just give me a better point than just he beat the Ravens. That's not a good enough point. But regardless, appreciate the $2 super chat. Brutal, appreciate you being here. But I think most of people in the chat today, any calls we get, or really this entire week, maybe the rest of the season, is going to be about the defense, right? Because I think this defense right now is. To say the least, it's very concerning, right? Because you would think that they were the unit that was really, banged up and everything. And early in the year, you could make the excuse that, man, well, they're without Winfield and they're without Cansey and this and that. But those excuses really go out the window now. I know they're missing Jamel Dean and Tyke Smith, and there's 2 starters right there. And anytime you're missing 2 starters, it's not a good thing. But this defense with their starters, they're getting torched and getting consistently torched in these big chunk plays and not being able to get off the field on third down and missing tackles and just giving up too many easy yards on first and down to make second down even easier, more manageable. It's just too much. And honestly, it's on Todd Bowles. I mean, it really is on Todd Bowles. This is his defense. He is a defensive coordinator, right? He is the guy there for them, and he calls the plays, he installs it. And I do think it's partly that they don't have the players. I do think it's a player issue as well. But somebody's got to fall on the sword, right? And if things don't turn around soon for this defense, you wonder, and look, I know there's going to be people that want to fire Todd Bowles now. Even if the Buccaneers do end up firing Todd Bowles, it ain't going to be until January. So the Glazers have never fired a head coach midseason. They're not going to do it now. It's just not going to happen. So you can wish that all you want, but it's just you're setting yourself up for disappointment. That's what you're expecting. But yeah, this defense is in a dire situation right now.
The Bucs were nowhere near perfect on either side of the football today, but I agree in the sense that the defense was the bigger of the two issues today. We will dive into it, but looking at game totals here, the more things change, the more they stay the same. 394 total yards of offense for the Atlanta Falcons. But get this, that wasn't even enough to lead the game. The Buccaneers finished with 432 total yards of offense, 330 through the air, 102 on the ground. There were some points in this game where the run game got away from them, had to really start to throw the football, right? I mean, Baker Mayfield, let's just dive into his day and the rest of this Buccaneers offense here. 37 for 50, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. You can say what you want about the interceptions. One of them is a great play by A.J. Terrell. Just an incredibly athletic play. Was able to kind of look at Baker's eyes there, see what he was looking for along the sideline. It's a tough throw to begin with, but he was in an area to make a play, and he did just that. The other one is on a flea flicker. The Bucs get cute on offense, and they weren't in a position to get cute at that point in the game. They were still behind, still trailing. That was one of the few shots they really took downfield, and it's an interception. I'm not going to be upset that they had Ryan Miller, of all receivers, running that route. Use what you have, right? If that's the position that your offense is in, then so be it, because up until that point, they were moving the football pretty well. But God bless Liam Coen, I suppose, because despite the interceptions, and we'll talk about Baker's day in a minute, despite the interceptions, this offense, I felt, with backup wide receivers and K. Dotton being your leading receiver today with almost 10 catches, I really do think they did enough to win the game here. They fell just short at the end there, but there were quite a few positions where they just needed to stop and couldn't get it.
They definitely, especially the first half, I think was really impressive, especially the run game, and I do think they had to get away from that run game a little bit because the score dictated that. But yeah, it is something to where this offense was probably good enough to win, right? If the defense could have just made that big play, right? You think about what were the back-breaking plays in this game? A lot of them were on third and sometimes fourth downs. The couple touchdowns. The first one is on a fourth down. The second one is on a third down. I Bleav the third one is on a third down. So you change these plays and you come up with a big play. And that changes the game, and they simply couldn't. So, yeah, I mean, I thought Liam Coen did fine. Game planning this game, scheming it up for what was given to him. You play with what you got, and I thought what they had, they did a decent enough job. Especially, I thought in the run game. Obviously, they had to abandon it, a little bit earlier than probably they wanted to. But, I mean, you can't have Baker Mayfield throwing the ball 50 times and not have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans out there. It's just you're just not going to win many football games doing that.
And I think you also have to give this team props, the ability to overcome that nightmare start that they had, right? I mean, you come out the first drive, Rachaad White looks like he's running the ball well, picks up a first down, fumbles it. Jesse Bates, the safety, comes in, makes a play for Atlanta. They capitalize. Kayvon Merriweather ends up slipping on a brutal 31-yard touchdown pass to Kyle Pitts on National Tight End Day. The Falcons are able to capitalize on positive field position there. And the Bucs, they're able to play well enough to get back into this game, retake the lead, right? They answer on offense. They get a couple of plays on defense at this point. The run game, before this game got out of hand and the Bucs really had to start throwing the football, because Baker threw the ball damn near 50 times, if not 50 times today. Yeah, 37 for 50.
He threw it 50 times. Yes.
He threw it 50 times today. In the first quarter, like you said, when the Bucs still had control of this game, they were running the football well. I Bleav after this game, still a franchise high season average of over 5.0 yards per carry on the ground for the Bucs running backs. Has never been done.
Yeah, we have a couple super chats catch up on. Jonathan Thomas with a $2 super chat says Baker played average to slightly above average. We'll talk about Baker's day here in a second. Corey Robbins with a $5 super chat says, sorry if you answered this already, but why didn't they show? So let's check end zone pylon cam on Winfield forced fumble. We'll get to that too. That was a big play in the game. I mean, the Bucs defense still got torched on that play, but it could have potentially taken off 7 points. Then Brew has Bucs with another $2 super chat. It says Fire Bowles, trade Baker, let Liam pick his quarterback. So Brutal trying to get the chat all riled up here, doing a pretty good job. We appreciate all the super chats though. Let's start with the Baker thing because we were talking about the offense. But I mean, really quick though, to get to your point about the running backs. I thought Bucky Irving did a pretty good job today. Thought they utilized both Irving and Rachaad White in the passing game. It's clear to me though that like the Sean Tucker thing just isn't a real thing. And he was fine today, but he barely got in. So I mean,
he got 2 carries. So is it not a thing because they're not making it a thing?
Yeah, I think so. I just think they just have more faith in Rachaad White and Bucky Irving, and maybe the game dictates that a little bit. I think both those guys are bit better receiving backs than Sean Tucker is. But yeah, to me, it's just clear that like the 3-headed monster thing, like if you want to say it's a monster at all, they're trying to make it a 2-headed monster. They're trying to cut off one of the heads. So, but let's get into the quarterback, Baker Mayfield's day. Mayfield, look, it seemed like when things were flowing, right, and they were able to dial up their game plan, he seemed all right. Hitting Cade Otton. Cade Otton had a great day. They needed him to have a great day, and he's one of the guys that stepped up. But it seemed like in the second half when they started airing it out a bit more, it just seemed like he was just trying to force things and he's making things more difficult on himself than it needs to be. And I mean, the one play that comes to mind was he threw an incompletion to Ryan Miller, and he could have taken it for 8 or 9 yards if he just ran the ball. He decides not to, and he tries to throw the ball. It's an incomplete pass. Just take the 8 yards, take the 8 yards and get out of there. Just trying to do too much now. I feel like both throws were kind of forced. He did get fooled, nice play by Terrell on that second one. But again, he's trying to force the ball down the field. I think he was trying to look for that chunk play and just wasn't really there. So I don't think he played particularly well today. I don't think so. The interceptions are concerning. That's 7 in the last 3 games. So that is a concern. He's got to cut those down, especially without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and especially with how this defense looks. You can't give the other team the football. Like you cannot do that. So and the Buccaneers, they ended up doing it 3 times today. Rachaad White starts you off the second play of the game with a fumble. We have another $2 super chat. It's Power Eye time in Tampa.
Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, at this point, we did see some more looks with a 2 running back backfield, the pony look as they call it, and also a $10 super chat here from Amazement717. He said, got screwed on Pitt's TD. Being aggressive, but not smartly, in my opinion, was costly, like not going for it before the half, then a poorly executed fake punt when they didn't have to do it at that moment. I agree. I think that there were times today where it was painfully obvious that Todd Bowles, his philosophy was to be aggressive today. Maybe not defensively. We'll talk about that a little bit when we wrap up the offense because there was some adjustments made today for sure, and we'll get into that. But yeah, there were times today where a lot of the mistakes the Bucs made, a lot of the biggest momentum plays of the day were just the Bucs being needlessly aggressive. An interception, looking for Ryan Miller on a flea flicker, and a badly timed fake punt.
I don't. Whoever's call that was, whether it's Coen or Bowles or the special teams coordinator or the freaking ball boy, like whoever it was, that is in that spot, not even at the 50, like you're still in your own territory. You cannot run that. I mean, regardless, when you run a fake punt, I always think it's usually better to throw it to. I mean, you're trusting your punter, but like I always think it's better to have him just catch it and throw it over the top, right? But to have it in that spot, you can't call that. I mean, you simply cannot call that. So yeah, they try a flea flicker, and then a couple drives later they try a fake punt. Like, come on, I understand you're trying to get a momentum shift, you're trying to get a spark, but you at some point you just gotta say, like, you gotta get back to the basics, especially when you're down the weapons that you are.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trailing in a game like this, you're okay to lay it out on the line every now and again, but I just think that you get too risky in a situation where you didn't need to do it. And you ultimately, in doing that, got away from what was working. A lot of the success the Bucs were having today, they were getting the ball out quick, they were setting up play action, but K. Dot was finding ways to get open. A lot of your guys were getting open underneath, quick underneath looks. I mean, the running backs, the Bucs ran 21, 25 plays in that first quarter, and I think 20 of them went to the running backs or
they were heavily involved. Their first drive was, 8 minutes. I mean, it was pretty perfect. Keeping your defense off the field. Oh my God, Kirk Cousins is gonna do this and that. Kirk Cousins can't do anything from the sideline, right? So it was their first two drives. I mean, were really. I think their first touchdown drive was 8 minutes. Their second touchdown drive was like 5.5 minutes. So they did a really good job there. I mean, living on third down, which is not sustainable, which is something that I think they're going to have to clean up because they are in a lot of third down situations. And I think right now the broadcast said they're converting still at over a 50% rate, like well above average. That's probably not going to last the entire season. So like they're going to have to do better in getting themselves in better situations and staying out of those third down situations. But even on the flea flicker, they were driving. They were almost in field goal range. Brutal with another $2 super chat. Baker 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last 1 and 2 last 3 games. 4 and 4. He's mid. He's just trying to get the chat riled up. We appreciate it though, Brutal. We appreciate the super chats. We appreciate you being here. So it's just that was a good first drive, and then it sort of felt like Baker and the entire team tried to just force things, and that's, like I said, whoever's call that was to do the fake punt and do the flea flicker. Like, why? Like why are you trying to do that? Just, it just seemed like they made things were going to be difficult anyway without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and especially with the way the defense is playing, but they made things much harder on themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, before we dive into the defense here, just to re-emphasize what this matchup meant today for Tampa Bay, I Bleav the Falcons are still undefeated against the NFC South.
They are 4-0.
They create even more distance between themselves and the rest of the division. I guess you could say it still is a two-team race here, but the Buccaneers still with a couple of tough teams on their schedule before the bye week. You need some guys to come back from injury. You're still missing pieces on offense, but, I mean, this defense... Listen, Kirk Cousins... When the Falcons have been at their best all season, it's when they play the Bucs, right? So do you trust this defense against, although he's had ups and downs this season, do you trust this defense against a Pat Mahomes? Do you trust this defense against a well-oiled Brock Purdy? Do you trust this defense against a couple of teams that they have here over the next couple of weeks? Because I think this offense can make plays. I think this defense has some dogs that can make plays. But fundamentally... this defense is just awful. I mean, they are bad at a lot of things, Evan. The dagger, I would argue, today for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was old man Kirk Cousins scrambling on 2nd and 15 to pick up a first down. What are we doing? Well, he didn't quite pick up the first down because don't forget, on 4th and 1 after a nice 3rd and 1 stop, they line up for the QB sneak. The defensive line, the linebackers aren't aggressive. They're not aggressive enough at the line of scrimmage. They don't attack the quarterback, and he is pushed forward despite looking like he was stopped to begin with. Kirk Cousins on the ground was the dagger for the Buccaneers defense today. I mean, they were doing a lot of other things badly as well, but I didn't think that play in that fashion was going to be the difference maker the way that it was. That was embarrassing today.
Yeah, and on that 4th and 1, I mean, it's bad when Kirk Cousins, you're playing man coverage, everybody's eyes, aren't on the quarterback, and the defensive line lets them leak out. And the defensive line, you cannot do that. You have to be able to get a better push up front, because when he has that much open grass, it doesn't matter how slow a dude is. When you give him it, he can take it. And on that 4th and 1, it just seemed like they weren't prepared for any sort of quarterback sneak at all. And I just don't know how, when it's that short, how you can't at least be having that in the back of your mind and just put all your big boys there. If they throw it, they throw it. Like if they throw it and pick up the first down, whatever. But just try and get all your big boys there. And you're right, he was initially stuffed, and then he got pushed forward because the Buccaneers didn't really have much beef up front. The offensive line or the Falcons was able to push them forward a good bit. So yeah, I mean, this defense, like you said, they have good players, but they're not a good unit. And there's a difference, right? There's going to be some people that said, oh, every player on the defense, they all suck and this and that. No, they have good players. It's just them fundamentally as a unit is bad, and it's on the coach, it's on the players, because the coaches scheming it up. It's on them, it's on the players for not executing, and quite frankly, I mean, on that Bijan Robinson touchdown, Greg Olson pointed it out. That was a perfect microcosm of, I think, what is the single biggest issue with this team is that they do not have a pass rush. They just do not. They cannot get to the quarterbacks. Greg Olson said, like, there's just you're playing this zone and you're rushing four, and that's fine, but Kirk Cousins, that was his 4th or 5th read. He's able to get through 4 or 5 reads before finding Bijan Robinson wide open for a touchdown. And they said because they couldn't touch him. They could not get theirs, and they had to. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that this defense has. But there's more than one. I mean, there's more than one, and it's not just a single player or anything. There's players who did not play well, but there is more than one player. This whole season, I mean, we're not even talking really about this particular game. And yes, the offense put him in some bad spots. The fumble, right? Sure, Rashad White, second play of the game,
The fake
fumble,
punt.
and then you do the fake punt, and
Yeah.
But I mean, this is now, I Bleav. I mean, yeah, it's so they gave up 36 to Atlanta week 5, 27 to New Orleans week 6, 41 to Baltimore week 7, and now again 31 to Atlanta here. So you 4 out of the last 5 weeks you've given up 30 plus. At some point, when does it end? And at some point, when does somebody do something? Because right now this defense is far and away the most concerning thing. Because again, early in the season when they didn't have Winfield and they didn't have Cansey, you could say, well, they gotta, yeah, that they're struggling, but they gotta get healthy. What's the excuse now? Like there is no excuse now. They're just not playing well.
No, they really aren't. And again, when you look at a 4-4 team at a turning point of their season, falling behind in the division race, you're going to have to stack some wins here to end the season. And you're going to have to start relying on other teams to lose at this point, right? I mean, you're relying on Atlanta to fall apart a little bit down the stretch. And they have some tough games, certainly. But with the lead they have within the division, you're kind of counting on a lot. You really
I mean,
are.
they have a 2-game lead against with you now. I mean,
They got the tiebreaker. They got the sweep for the year.
It's it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to. And look, we don't want to count them as losses before they happen, because anything can happen on any Sunday. But let's face it, the Bucs are not likely to win either of their next 2 games. Okay, against the Chiefs or the 49ers. They're not like, could it happen? Sure. Is it likely though? Probably not, I would say. I think even the most optimistic Bucks fan would say, "Oh yeah, probably not." Which is again what made this game so important, right? And that's another thing that made this game so critical. So the Bucks next 2 games are against the Chiefs, 49ers, and the Falcons next 2 games are against the Cowboys and the Saints. So the Saints, I mean, played them tough the first time. The Saints certainly could have, the Saints could have won that game. I mean, they really could have. And then the Cowboys, who knows? So again, Atlanta has some tough games. I mean, Washington looks tough, Minnesota, the Chargers, but there also is opportunities there where they can falter a bit and still be okay. Whereas now the Bucks down the stretch had to play darn near perfect.
Want to shout out a couple of top playmakers on the offense really quickly. Cade Otton, your leading receiver, 9 receptions, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns on National Tight End Day. They got him involved early, and he proved that he can pick up the slack a little bit as long as they can find some good looks to get him open. He had a really big day. Raheem Jarrett, I would argue, had 3 of the most important catches of the day. He caught that Hail Mary in the end zone just out of bounds, right? So he made that catch. But a lot of the other catches he had today were very impactful for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His first of the day, first of the season, after coming off of IR and being activated for the Buccaneers this week, was good to see him. Bucky Irving got involved in the pass game as well. 7 catches for 40 yards. Rachaad White had 5 catches for 38 yards. Jalen McMillan, once again, getting more targets, 4 receptions for 35 yards. Trey Palmer, 2 catches for 29 yards. Ryan Miller, 3 catches for 19. Sterling Shepard, 3 for 18. There was a point in this game where Sterling Shepard left, was being evaluated on the sideline. I do believe he came back into the game, but we'll see what the injury report looks like this week.
Yeah, he was targeted on that final drive.
But final thoughts here on the offense. You know, we can talk about Baker Mayfield in his day. We already did that, but I do think for the most part, they show that they can still function. They can still move the football well. Yeah. They can lean on this run game if need be, especially if they are controlling the game. That part matters. When you fall behind, you have to start throwing the football more. But even then, they did a really good job getting their alternative targets involved. I know it was a lot of the running backs early in this game, but they were still effective at throwing the football all over the yard today.
I think that was an important point there, right? They showed that yes, they can still be maybe not a good, great offense and oh my god, this and that and fireworks, but they can still function, right? Like in this stretch here where you're without Chris Godwin the entire year, but you're only going to be without Mike Evans for maybe 2 more, hopefully only 2 more games. So, they have shown that yes, they can be a functional offense and not like look completely lifeless when they don't have those 2 guys. So I think that was a positive sign. But yeah, I mean, I thought the offensive line played pretty good today. They need a better game from the quarterback, though. Yep. I mean, they need a better game. And again, 3 turnovers. I mean, obviously the one isn't Baker's fault. They had nothing to do with it. But, 2 interceptions, it can't happen. And it seems like he's just trying to force things because maybe, you're down Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Like maybe you feel like, you got to make a play, right? And just, I think you got to almost go back to the basics and just try not to just play football, man. Try not to play hero ball, just play football. And too often, especially in the second half, Baker was playing hero ball.
Let's get to some calls here from the 813. You're on the Cannon Fire podcast. Who's this? Hello, going one.
Mixed review as far as how I feel afterwards. On one end, honestly, I'm not even going to lie, I did not expect us to compete at the level in which we competed. This game was definitely in grasp, and much like the first, came down to us turning the ball over and not doing what we need to do on the job security. I think Baker came out the gate hot. I think he came steady. I mean, we had a couple 10-plus play drives. I mean, just milking the clock, which was great. And then, flipped the script to when we needed it. I think we got down the field relatively smooth. The running game is like, there's a running game in Tampa Bay. I think the running back by committee for us to, to be able to have the triple head monster is great. I would like to see a lot of these guys on the field together. I would love to see a lot more, White and Bucky packages. And I just think that's going to be the play. I think after this, I wanted to give up on the season last week, just because, the emotional, pitfall, to know that you've lost 2 really, really great receivers in the same game for an extended amount of time. But I think after this game, I don't know where we're going to get a defense from, but if there's any way that they could just play better, because we make the adjustments. The problem is that, they got up too much on us. And I can't put all of this on the defense just because you turn the ball over, give people a short field. That's what happens. You go for it on fourth down for God knows what reason. That's what happens. In the NFL, like the Falcons did exactly, what you would expect somebody with a great quarterback and great weapons to do. I don't know how we answer the Kyle Pitts problem. If any other team has a Kyle Pitts on their safeties are getting burnt left and right. Going through the starting a rookie cornerback, going through those growing pains again. I remember when we went through them with Carl, we went through them with Jamel, and I saw a documentary about Vontae Barber, and he said he didn't hit his stride till year 3. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna have to go through that, and it is what it is. But I mean, it's still promising. I think he made a great play on one, and then got burned on the other on help that he probably thought he was going to get from Antoine Mayfield, who got caught looking in the backfield. But end all be all, I don't know if this is over. I think a lot of the Cooper Kupp talk may be coming up at this point. But I doubt who wants to trade Cooper Kupp after the win they just had. So I really don't know where we go. And my final take is this. After this game, at least for the first half, I was very much considering maybe, hey, and I'm not an advocate of this. I love Todd Bowles, but I do not want to lose this OC. And that is what I'll leave it at. And hey, I heard there was a head coach that got fired in New York that might be open to a DC job. We'll see what happens, but we can talk about that later in the season. But those are my takes from the game for sure.
We appreciate you calling, my friend. We'll talk to you soon. Go Bucs.
All right. Always.
All right, a lot of interesting points there. And before we get to this next call, I really appreciate you guys holding on for us. It is important to mention that the season is not over. Like, this thing is a long way from over. There is still a lot of football left in the 2024 season, but the way that you go about it is very different. The Bucs can still make the playoffs, but when you lose a division race, or when you lose control of a division race like this, and you're playing for a wild card spot, you no longer have the ability to control your own destiny. You can't win your way into the playoffs with a division title. And unfortunately, the NFC South isn't going to be good enough this year to win it with only 8 or 9 wins on the season. Clearly not when teams are playing the way that they are. But everything changes because now you have to win important games down the stretch. And on top of that, you have to rely on other teams to line things up for you, potentially playing for a wild card spot here. And the NFC South is, not getting easier, or the NFC isn't getting easier.
Just to update the situation right now. Right now in the conference, the Bucs are currently 9th. Obviously, the top 7 make it. The Bucs are 9th. Now, the Cowboys, though, play the 49ers tonight. If the Cowboys win, I Bleav they would pass the Bucs, because right now the Cowboys would be 4-3. The Bucs would be, the Cowboys would be 4-3. Bucs would be 4-4. So I think the Cowboys would pass them just because the Bucs have played one more game, but the Cowboys have one less loss. The Bears are playing right now. They're right ahead of the Buccaneers. They're 8th in the conference at 4-2. But I mean, so basically your 3 wildcard spots though right now are 5 Green Bay at 6-2, 6 is Minnesota at 5-2, and 7 is Philly at 5-2. Obviously, the Bucs have the head-to-head tiebreaker against Philly. But again, you're going to be looking at it, and now it gets tougher. Is it officially over? No, but I will say it's on life support, because to me, I don't see a way they're going to win these next 2 games. So I think you're going to be looking at the bye week at 4-6. And then that basically means, and look, after their bye week, their schedule does get much easier. I mean, their schedule gets easier, and they're also going to be getting Mike Evans back, so that'll help. But you're going to have to go on a run. And just what you said, you don't control your own destiny anymore. You're going to be sitting there rooting for other things, other teams to, come up with maybe some upsets or some things, later in the year where you're like, oh man, I really need the 2-11 team to beat this team, because the Bucs, if this team loses, the Bucs have a chance. That's where things get tough, right? Because you want to control your own destiny, and now the Buccaneers are in a position where they probably aren't going to be able to do that. They're going to have some help if they want a shot at making it.
Let's get back to these calls here from the 727. You are live with the Cannon Fire Podcast. Who's this?
How's it going, guys? This is Zach.
Zach, how you doing,
What's
friend?
that?
I mean, as good as you can be,
Yeah.
right?
I hear you.
Yeah, pretty much. So there's a couple kind of obvious takeaways from this game, I feel, and the bigger concern is a Bowles thing for obvious reasons, but I think it's also a team identity thing, and these two issues kind of go hand in hand for me. The trade away you get with Todd Bowles as a head coach is that normally you get a pretty competitive defense and some bad decision-making and game management. But this year, for what seems like a pattern of the last 3 or so years, the defense has regressed, and the game management decisions are as bad as they ever are. And I think it kind of bleeds back into your identity as a team, or lack thereof from a schematic standpoint. You know what you have with KJ Britt. You may or may not try to help him doing things like calling that cover one robber, which I've been screaming for that since last week, getting blown open in the middle of the field. But you call the robber on the side of your rookie corner to leave him one-on-one. And that, to me, is sort of a head-scratcher. The fake punt doesn't make much sense at all. I could feel that coming on because I guarantee the logic in that was thinking back to that Detroit game, where Detroit ran a fake punt from their own territory. It seemed to swing the game. No one expected it, but you don't make that decision there. But the thing that doesn't make even more sense on top of that is you come out in the second half saying, we're going to go down swinging, and you know exactly what position you're going to be in going into that half, basically before the first half ends. And instead of just taking the full measure and going for it on fourth down, you kick the field goal. You took your half measure. But then your response is to start getting overly aggressive and taking the fake punt opportunity. It just doesn't make sense from a game management standpoint. And that has always been the thing with Bowles. Is your defensive identity going to be a defense that runs soft zone but has these exotic blitz packages? Well, yeah, sometimes, or not, or sometimes you're just the team that runs soft zones with a four-man rush. I don't understand it. And the biggest worry I have moving forward, because this sort of, I feel this game's the nail in the coffin for the year. It'd be a different story if you had Evans, if you had Godwin, but it's not even the offense that's the issue. They just give you a better chance at shooting out. My worry is that for whatever reason, they either keep Bowles out of necessity or loyalty, and Liam Coen gets a legitimate offer to be a head coach somewhere. I think at this point, with the defense regressing to the point it's at, you bite the bullet and gamble on a new defensive coordinator if it means keeping Liam Coen on as your team's head coach.
You know,
if there's been one bright spot this whole year, you cannot afford to lose Liam Coen. What changed in this offense other than Dave Canales leaving and Liam Coen taking over, other than what? Getting Bucky Irving, Graham Barton? Like, they're definitely responsible for some of the production, but I think the elephant in the room is how great Cohen's been. And teams are going to notice. Can you afford to let that guy walk and keep Todd Bowles on as your head coach?
Todd Bowles is 21-21 as Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach after today. If there is one thing that we know about him, is he is inconsistently consistent. Or consistently inconsistent, right? Whichever way you want to put it, this guy is really good at being average so far. And again, I think the regression on the defense is incredibly important. I think, honestly, the personnel was an issue headed into this season. I think if the Bucs want to do anything at all to show us that they are serious about trying to fix things on the defensive side of the ball, I legitimately think they have to get aggressive at the trade deadline. I don't think it's going to save your season, but Evan, how aggressive do you get now? They need personnel help. Do you start to mortgage draft picks for 2025 and maybe 26 to try and save this season this year? Because this team's still going to win some games. I think they're still going to be competitive, but there's a lot of areas they need help, specifically on the defense here. And then again, an interesting point brought up about Todd Bowles and this defensive philosophy. I would love for this to play out the way that Lovie Smith's departure did, and then you kind of bring Dirk Cutter in, but that also begs the question, just how in love are the Buccaneers with Todd Bowles and the rest of this coaching staff, right? How different would that look if they were to lean on a Liam Coen. That's a big risk to take, I think, for Tampa Bay. And it's a lot of decisions. Like, there's still a lot of football left in 2024. But Evan, your thoughts here?
I think the Dirk Cutter thing maybe, and look, and we can talk about this when that time comes, if that time comes. The Dirk Cutter thing could be maybe a cautionary tale, right? It was a defensive head coach. You had Dirk Cutter as the offensive coordinator. Offense doing so good, you don't want to lose Dirk Cutter. You promote Dirk Cutter, right? The Buccaneers promoted Raheem Morris because they did not want to lose him. So it's not always the easiest solution. That being said, to the answer the trade deadline thing, I think the caller here brought up a pretty good point. He said in his mind, right, in his opinion, this was the dagger, right? This was it for the season. Why am I going to be trading away draft capital, right? And if this is it, right? Why am I going to be trading away draft capital? Even if you do make a run, I'm not sure I'm confident enough in this team to want to give away, even if it's a 4th round pick or something, a day 3 pick. I'm not in the position to where I would feel comfortable giving up any sort of draft picks. I'm not saying sell. They're not going to sell.
No.
But I'm not comfortable really doing much of anything.
I think you would have a better argument for making a move if you either had Godwin back, obviously, or really if Servassier Dennis had a chance of return, which he doesn't, he's out for the year, then because you had, as long as KJ Britt is on the field and for whatever reason, either they don't trust Russell or he just isn't capable of being a starter, so long as either of those guys are out there, you're not going to be competitive for a Super Bowl. It's not going to happen. And it would be different if your window on Godwin leaving was small this year. In the event that we couldn't bring him back because he balled out, someone's going to offer him money that we don't have. Maybe you make a push, but you can't. It's a fool's errand. You're giving up the future for a shot that's kind of non-existent.
Right.
Who on the defense that could come back is going to turn this thing around?
Right. And also, who could they acquire? In a couple weeks at the trade deadline, that's going to magically turn the defense into being better. So yeah, it's tough.
Yep.
Zach,
I will say for a couple little devil's advocate points, I guess we could start with Mr. Bowles. If there is something that he does that you don't see from an X's and O's standpoint, or just from watching these games, I am going to say I Bleav that he does have a knack for developing these sort of unrefined talents. If he has a positive trait, that's definitely one of them. But I don't know, are some of the decisions that are being made on a rostering standpoint because of that? And that's the sort of double edge of the double-edged sword. If you're counting on this guy getting in talent cheap and developing them out, sometimes they don't hit. And now you're where we're at now, fielding Thunderbird. And granted, it works with guys like Izzian, but it's not going to work all the time. Whether or not you bring in someone with a different defensive vision that does or does not continue that trend, I don't know. But that's an issue. I do just want a white knight for Baker Mayfield for a second. Neither of those INTs I thought were egregious. The one was a 50-50 ball by design, and you didn't have Mike Evans out there. I hate the play call more than I hate the throw. And the other interception is just a great play. What can be said about that other than he jumped the route, and it was a good play. That's about all there is to it. But it looks a lot different if your defense isn't giving up those points, because the run game is working, and I really honestly wish they didn't abandon it so soon.
Yeah.
They seemed like they were ready to stop it in the second half, but I think there was enough time left that if you made some better decisions managing the clock and the game generally, you could afford yourself more room to lean into those plays.
We got a big $20 super chat here on the Wendy's Fun. Thank you to Black and Gold 1999. Got to hit the soundboard. Give him a round of applause. Says there's a linebacker, not sure what his name is, that plays for the Raiders. We need help badly on the pass rush. Can't make a play. Zach, we're going to let you go here, but we appreciate your input, my friend. Great points this week, and we'll talk to you soon. Go Bucs.
Appreciate it, y'all. Go Bucs.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the situation the Bucs find themselves in. I know we're talking about the defense here, but looking around before the trade deadline, the Bucs have been pretty solid since the beginning of these conversations that, hey, our guys are our guys. We're not going to go out on a limb. There's not really anyone they can bring in here over the next few weeks that's going to magically transform this defense. But to further your point and address this super chat here from Black and Gold 1999 here, Evan, Bucs are in an interesting spot.
They are. But it's tough because you're sitting at 4-4 right now, and to me, the buyers are going to be the ones that Bleav they have a shot at a Super Bowl, right? And even if they turn it around, is this team going to win a Super Bowl? I mean, not with this defense. And I guess the point could be made, well, if they turn it around, you acquired somebody at the trade deadline on defense that could help. Sure, but I don't know. It's just I'm not seeing anybody unless it is a game-changing trade out of nowhere that type of trade would cost a ton, by the way, which they're not willing to do. I can't see anybody coming in here and just magically just turning the Bucs defense from being bad to even being like average. I just can't really see that. Speaking of defense, really quick, I want to get this out of the way. By the way, appreciate the $20 super chat. Really appreciate it. We're gonna be stuffed with Wendy's tonight, but. Corey Robbins, I want to get back to his original super chat there about the Antoine Winfield thing, Kyle Pitts thing about a lot of people were asking about the pylon cam, right? Why didn't they use the pylon cam? I'm sure they did, right? Just because the broadcast doesn't show it, they might have used that pylon cam. Just because the broadcast doesn't show it doesn't mean the refs did. I think I sort of agree with. I think Mike Pereira made the point like it might have been a fumble, but they did call it a touchdown. And in order to reverse that, you need indisputable evidence that that's a fumble. And I just don't know if there was enough. As we have another $10 super chat
On the correction.
Black gold, not black and gold. Black gold, 19.99. So appreciate it. But he paid $10 just to tell us how to pronounce it.
Keep saying his name wrong.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, if he's throwing you $10 for saying his name wrong, then never get it right.
Right.
Oh, we appreciate you, Black Gold.
Black and gold.
Yeah, I gotta say, you make a lot of fans happy if you put the pylon cam up there. If the officiating crew sees something, the confirmation from guys in the booth is always nice. But I tell you this, man,
it was close.
I almost did a backflip. I was watching the game on my phone outside on the grill, and I thought he had done it again. Not only is it
against the Falcons,
right? Yeah, in Tampa against the Falcons, it would have been absolutely insane. But a big time play. And shout out while we are talking about these defensive backs before we get to this next call. Shout out to Christian Izien, led the team in tackles today. I thought he was all over the field, had to step up in a major way in the absence of Jamel Dean. So they've been moving some defensive backs around, and Izien, he was a missile out there today.
Also, someone else, I thought Zion McCollum was fine. It's kind of like cornerbacks are kind of like offensive linemen. If you don't hear their name, that's typically a good sign. If like the camera doesn't show them or anything like that. Drake London, who I imagine Zion McCollum was up against most of the day, had 4 catches for 34 yards, wasn't really a factor in this game. So, I thought Zion McCollum had a pretty strong game.
Let's get to our next call here from the 713. Who's this?
I thought Zion McCollum had a pretty strong game.
Hello, going once, going twice.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Who's this?
Hey, how you doing? This is Kyle.
Kyle, what's up, man?
I don't know where to start, really. The season started off with injuries. We had Cansey out. Winfield was out after the first game. To myself, I was like, it's fine. They're going to come back. Everything's going to be okay. And then we go out and we leave Godwin and Evans. Or we don't take Evans out after his touchdown. We could clearly see he was limping. He was not in a state to, play and be productive without risking worsening his injury, obviously, which happened. And I don't know. It happens, It's unfortunate, but it happens. But Todd Bowles something needs to change with Todd Bowles. Last year in the divisional game against the Lions, yes, Baker Mayfield threw that interception, but Todd Bowles' time management did not help.
No, especially on that final drive for sure.
Yeah, it's the lack of consistency. It's he hasn't been able to decide week in and week out how aggressive he wants to be. He's more aggressive today and last week against the Ravens than he is in those final few minutes against the Detroit Lions. And I know we came on this podcast and said that game was basically over, but that's because we were, talking about the philosophy of the head coach. Like, I don't think any of us expected Todd Bowles to get overly aggressive at that point. but it's the lack of consistency. And again, inconsistency, I think, is one of the worst traits you can have as a head coach in the NFL.
I completely agree. Inconsistency is what keeps a team from being as great as it can be. With Bowles, we have a ceiling, and this ceiling is not too high. When he gets our hopes up at like Eagles game or these games where we do good. We get our hopes up. We're like, oh, have things really changed? Is it, are we on the path for something better? And then it just goes back down again. And then our hopes are being brought up and they're being crushed over and over and over again. So something needs to change. We have a ceiling and we need to get past this ceiling. I don't think we can make it to the Super Bowl with Bowles. I don't believe so.
It's an interesting question, and I think by the end of the year, we're going to have a lot more discussions about it. But Kyle, we appreciate your input, my friend. Go Bucs. We'll talk to you soon. All right, so we will wrap up with this. I got to tell you, just my thoughts on the trade deadline. I know that you're in a position to say, the Bucs don't necessarily benefit from getting rid of future picks, future first-round, second-round picks, whatever the case may be. And that's fine. I completely understand that side of the argument, and I agree with you. I don't think the Bucs should mortgage too much of their future.
Oh, yeah.
But I think a pass rusher, and this is a pipe dream, honestly. This is kind of just me talking. I don't think this is anything the Bucs are willing to go out and do, but I think this is the move that they could make that would have the most effect in helping this defense get to where it needs to be. You need a pass rusher. You need a pass rusher. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Yaya Diaby, I know he was hurt a little bit today, but they're just not getting the job done. You give me a Max fucking Crosby on this team, Evan. A lot of the miscues that Kirk Cousins had today was because of meaningful pressure. 54 was able to get there. CJ Brewer had a big-time sack, was explosive off of the line of scrimmage, ran right past the center. Great timing. But these big interior guys and Levante David, they cannot do it every single play. Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. Again, this is a pipe dream here. But holy shit, I think that would be the most impactful position. We can talk about a linebacker, this and that. I think as long as you got 54, the linebacker position will always be average at worst, regardless of how bad the guy next to him is. But I think a pass rusher, guy with his hand in the dirt, just a fucking dog, man. They need it. They don't have it on that defensive line. Vita Vea, those guys in the middle, they can only do so much. I think if the Bucs are serious about wanting to save this season on defense, which I don't think they are, but if they were, I think a pass rusher is what they need.
No, they definitely need a pass rusher now. Max Crosby,
Come on,
dude. That would. I mean, I'm just saying that's mortgaging the future. That takes probably 2 firsts, maybe. Because he's 27. He's under contract for 2 more years after this one. So that's not. I mean, literally, Mark Davis came out and said they are not trading him. So I think it would take a monster package.
It would. And again, a man can dream, right? I completely understand.
He's the type of guy they need.
I completely understand that I'm on my soapbox here, kind of begging for things that won't ever happen. But a man can dream, Evan.
No, that's America was built on a dream. But it's they do need it, but it doesn't have to be a guy like Max Crosby. Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns. I know the Browns had a big win today, but they're now 2-6. They're not going anywhere this year. Even with the big win today, they really gonna make a run? Probably not. He's a veteran pass rusher that's been there. I don't know how much better he is than what you have, though. But he's somebody that isn't going to cost a ton as far as draft capital. I know Josh Uche from the Patriots was a healthy scratch today, I think, for New England. So he could be a possibility. But again, I get what you're saying. And if they do want to, try and turn this thing around quickly, right, and not just have faith in their guys and stuff, I think it would start with getting a pass rusher because Honestly, I mean, we talked about it plenty before the season even started. Like, we thought the pass rush was going to be their biggest issue on the defense, at least, right? I thought pretty much on the team, but, at least on the defense, we thought the pass rush would be the biggest issue. And while there is many more issues on this defense, I still think the pass rush is probably the number one because, look, if you can get to the quarterback consistently, that's going to mask a lot of your other issues. That is going to be able to mask a lot of different things. So I do agree that a pass rusher is what they need. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a Max Crosby type, but that's something for in the offseason. Maybe not specifically Max Crosby, but you do wonder if they look to try and get one of those guys, or do they finally freaking, this is not a great scenario for the team, but man, do they finally lose enough games to have a top 15 pick and draft a pass rusher then, right? Like, they drafted pass rusher, sure, but like Joe Trinischenko was the 32nd overall pick. Logan Hall was the 33rd overall pick. Chris Brazo was the second round pick. Yeah, Diaby was the third round pick. They haven't really truly invested that in like the Jason Light era, pretty much, right? I mean, Vita Vea was the 12th overall pick, and he's not a pass rusher, like a pure pass rusher, and that's worked out pretty good. So they haven't really had that chance, or that pick to be a top 15 pick as a pass rusher. They've kind of tried to make it work with these other guys in the later rounds or later in the first round. So it would be interesting to see. But yeah, this pass rush definitely needs some sort of jolt. And I don't expect the Bucs to be sellers, but I also don't expect them to be buyers at the upcoming trade deadline.
Let's wrap it up with this on Todd Bowles' defense. We kind of said leading into this game and leading into the next few games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after losing the pieces that they had, some adjustments were going to have to be made. And on the defensive side of the ball today, Evan, some adjustments were made. And I know that some of these things can't make up for lack of player execution, bad tackling, not getting aggressive at the line of scrimmage, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, bad coverage, things like that. But I believe today may have been the least amount of times Todd Bowles has ever blitzed in a game as, defensive head honcho for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think headed into the third quarter, it was something like 11.9% of plays today he had blitzed on, which Todd Bowles is normally a guy who hangs out around that, 50-60% range.
Yeah, not many today. I think he was, maybe a little worried that a guy, a veteran like Cousins, if the blitzes don't get there, a veteran's going to be able to pick you apart, right? Especially if your blitzes aren't effective. But they ran a blitz early in the game, and it was Atlanta's first punt. And it worked out pretty well. They ran a blitz and they confused the Falcons. So I'm a little surprised. Two things I'm surprised. One on the defensive side of the ball, one on the offensive side. I'm surprised they didn't blitz a little bit more. And in the second half, even though the score was what it was, I'm surprised they didn't try and run the ball a little bit more. As I recall, that last Falcons touchdown to make it 31-17 happened a little later. It didn't happen instantly. Yeah. Like, they didn't take the opening drive in the second half and score a touchdown. So it was still a 7-point game for a little bit, and they kind of abandoned the run. And I don't quite know why, because it was working quite well. So that's definitely something that I think. Two things that I think just noticed to me that I was like, kind of curious as to why they went away from these specific things. But yeah, not a ton of blitzes, and didn't seem to matter what they did though today, and really for this season. I mean, it's been a downturn, and Kansas City coming up. Kansas City's offense isn't great, but I mean they're still going to do damage. So one I'm worried about those the following week is San Francisco, because Kyle Shanahan already owns Todd Bowles as is, and that's when Bowles' defenses, you were like, yeah, they're pretty good. They're not like elite, but they're pretty good. Now look at this defense now. Like, San Francisco might put up 50, because Kyle Shanahan just owns Bowles. And here's my biggest concern. I was actually thinking about this, might have been earlier today, about Bowles when you're talking about keeping him for the potential future, right? What was the big bugaboo right on Todd Bowles was when he was a defensive coordinator. It's like, oh man, Sean McVay's got his number and this and that, and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, those guys he doesn't do well against those guys. Well, now we're seeing the NFL more and more. Everybody is starting to replicate those offenses. Mm-hmm. Zach Robinson is a Sean McVay guy. Liam Coen, who Todd Bowles hired, was a Sean McVay guy. Dave Canales was from Shane Waldron's tree in Seattle. Shane Waldron was from Kyle Shanahan. Like, it's all starting to come together from those two guys, and a lot of these offenses are starting to look pretty similar to those and have similar things. So what is just every single one? Well, yeah, it's a Sean McVay guy, so yeah, he's going to dominate the Bucs because Bowles can't seem to figure it out. Because right now, Zach Robinson has called 2 perfect games against Todd Bowles' defense with the Falcons. Sean McVay. The Bucs played the Rams this year. The only time that Todd Bowles really did well against them was in 2022, and the Rams didn't really have a ton at the time. I think there was a lot of injuries there. So that's my concern. If you keep him, well, the league keeps looking for the Sean McVays and Kyle Shanahan. So you're going to keep finding them. And what's going to happen there if 20 out of the 32 NFL teams have a guy that's like a Sean McVay, like Kyle Shanahan in terms of scheme, maybe not like as good of a coach, but like in terms of scheme, what does that mean? Your defense is just going to get torched in half the games? So that's a big concern for me. But yeah, it's something.
I think in the de-evolution of this defense, you have seen more and more miscommunication. Guys not knowing where they're supposed to be, guys kind of with their hands up in the air, guys in the wrong position, soft zone coverage being what it is. The adjustments that need to be made, there's a huge list, but more man coverage has got to be on top of that list. But, on top of all of these things that the Buccaneers defense is not doing well, I think the most concerning part is this lack of communication, this miscommunication. Guys just not really picking up on techniques. They talked about it as recently as this week. Concerns with Jordan Whitehead, a guy who has played in this defense before, not really being entirely up to speed yet. That's on coaching. Regardless of where the player is, this is especially a guy who should know the playbook. He's been in it before. I don't know if it's too many things that have changed since the last time he's seen it, or if it's just, bad matchups on the field. But holy hell, man, things have certainly got to change here for Todd Bowles. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4-4, staring down the barrel of a gun. I don't know how else to put the rest of this season. They are going to have to exceed some expectations. They're going to have to go on a run. But a game like today, just a disappointing loss because you needed it to rely on that division title. You were kind of hoping to stay competitive within the NFC South, and the Falcons are a team that they're rolling right now, and just falling apart at the worst time here, I think.
Yeah, it's a shame because again, injuries are one thing, but you can't make that excuse for the defense. You just simply can't. If this offense went out there and scored 10 points, you'd be like, yeah, the offense wasn't good, but hey, that's kind of how it's going to look without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, right? But this defense shouldn't have that many excuses. They really shouldn't. And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins isn't a bum. He's been a good NFL quarterback his entire career, but they just don't look they don't look competitive. They don't look like they're playing the same sport at times, and they just look overmatched consistently. And it just seemed like the Falcons were just getting chunk after chunk after chunk, and really it was them getting in their own way that caused the Bucs to remain in this football game. There was a couple of holding calls against the Falcons that took some big plays away. Then obviously, like I said, the safety was literally because Tyler Algier just couldn't handle the handoff. That's why the Bucs didn't force the fumble. It just Algier just bobbled it. And then there was a couple of drops there early in the game for Atlanta. So yeah, it was definitely something to where this defense needs a reality check, and I'm not sure what has to happen in order for that to come, but something's got to change here because it's you're facing two of the best in the NFL this upcoming week, and this upcoming next 2 weeks. And I know the schedule gets easier after the bye, but
might be too
with
late.
this defense, who's to say? Who is to say? Yeah, you understand. You got the Giants and you got the Panthers twice, but who's to say that one of those games, your defense just continues to do what they do here, and look, like there's still NFL players on the other side there. Like, who's to say that your defense just continues to be terrible, right? They take advantage of that. So it is really, I think, especially coming out of this game, the biggest concern here is easily the defense. You talk about the quarterback, and yeah, Baker didn't play great, but I think the biggest concern has to be this defense moving forward.
Bucs head coach Todd Bowles took some credit or took some accountability, I guess, at the podium today talking to the media. He said, quote, "We need to do a hell of a lot better job than what we're doing, and that starts with me." So a crucial couple of weeks here for head coach Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they count down the weeks to the bye week. Again, looking to get healthy, try and go on a run here in the second half of the season because that's what you're going to have to do if you want to earn a spot in the postseason. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Want to thank everybody who hung out with us today over on YouTube. At one point, had over 200 people in here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you to everybody who called in on the Autograph fan line. We truly appreciate you guys. And thank you for the Cannon Fire crew chiming in with Super Chats, Black Gold 1999. Anybody else that I may have missed? There were quite a few of them today. It was a busy day for Super Chats, and we appreciate it. We really do. You guys are everything behind the show. And, we'd be sitting here talking to ourselves if nobody decided to watch the show. So you guys have a choice in Buccaneers content, and we are incredibly grateful that you choose to ride with us. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_Daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got in the hopper for this week?
Yeah, gonna have obviously the day after reactions. Just should be interesting. Should be a lot of mixed reactions. I think some good, some bad, mostly bad. But we will see. And then it's on to Kansas City. So stay tuned to BucsNation.com for all that good stuff. And they play Monday night again. So a reminder, folks, if you're looking for them on Sunday, they ain't gonna be there. Played Monday night for the second time in 3 weeks. Just, you gotta love it. But then also stay tuned to here on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel. If you're listening on audio, we appreciate you listening on audio. But if you do want a little bit more coverage, head over to the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel. We have best and worst after the game, before the game. We have players to watch. We also have betting the Bucs during the week, which betting the Bucs went 3-1 this week. Okay, 7-1 in our last two weeks. So pretty good. We're starting to heat up here. We got over 500 again, so we are starting to get rolling here. But yeah, stay tuned to all the content we have throughout the week on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel.
Monday Night Football, my friend, going to be another late night. I cannot wait. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, you can find myself, Instagram, and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the game. We will talk to you later on this week with the midweek show, and we'll have a game preview for you as well. Getting ready for Monday Night Football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road against the defending back-to-back Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Should be a great time, I think.
Yeah,
we'll see what the week brings. We will keep you posted every step of the way. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.